All right, for today's explainer, we've got a real head scratcher from history. It's the story of a brilliant general who, at the absolute peak of his power, at the very moment of his greatest victory, just walked away. So, yeah, that's the big question, right? Why would anyone do that? I mean, think about it. You've just pulled off the impossible, a victory that'll go down in the history books, and then you immediately turn your back on it? It makes zero sense on the surface. But the story of this general, Liu Yu, well, it's a perfect lesson in why winning on the battlefield is only half the game. And just look at this timeline. It's just wild. He kicks off his campaign in 416, and in a little over a year, bam, he takes not one, but two enemy capitals. First Luoyang, and then the big one, Chang'an. This was the stuff of legend. He literally did the impossible. And then he just leaves. By the end of that same year, he's already heading back east. He just abandons the very prize he and his men fought and died for. And that right there is what we call the Chang'an paradox. Figuring out why he left? Well, that's how we unlock a much, much bigger lesson about how power really works.
Okay, so the official story, the excuse you'll find in a lot of the old history books is pretty simple. His soldiers were just homesick. They wanted to go home. And yeah, that's a nice, tidy explanation, but is it true? Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, that whole homesick thing, it really starts to fall apart when you look at the facts. First off, the campaign was short. We're talking about a year, not some 10-year epic. And his army, they were winners. They were loaded with spoils of war. That's not usually when an army gets restless. And here's the kicker. He left some of his most ambitious generals behind to run the place. What, were they not homesick? It just doesn't add up. Everything points to the fact that he was planning to stay. This retreat was a sudden, sharp turn.
So, if it wasn't his troops getting homesick, what was it? What could have possibly forced him to make such a drastic move? Well, this gets us to the real reason for his hurry-up-and-leave retreat. See, for Liu Yu, the real prize wasn't the city of Chang'an. He wasn't just a general. He had his eyes on becoming the emperor. To do that, he had to get back to the capital, Jiankang, and personally oversee his takeover of the throne. That was the ultimate goal.
But that just opens up another can of worms, doesn't it? Why the insane rush? Other powerful warlords had pulled this off from a distance before. I mean, think about it. Just a few decades earlier, Cao Cao's son became emperor while he was hundreds of miles away. So why couldn't Liu Yu, a guy with all this military clout, do the same? Why did he feel like he had to be there in person? Breathing down everyone's necks. The answer, it turns out, isn't found on a map or in a battle plan. It's in his own inner circle, and it points to a fatal flaw, not in his skills as a general, but in how he understood power itself. To really get Liu Yu, you have to know this term, 草莽英雄. It basically means a grassroots hero. This guy came from nothing. He was a commoner who climbed the ladder through pure grit and battlefield skill. He was a warrior through and through, not a polished scholar. And that, right there, was the root of his problem. He could never really connect with the powerful elite families who held all of the real political sway in the government. In fact, one of his own guys, a general named Hu Fan, saw this plain as day. He basically told Liu Yu, look, you can beat any army on the field, but these white-faced scholars back at court, they're never going to accept you. They cared about poetry and fancy debates. They might be afraid of you, sure, but they'd never be truly loyal. He was a total outsider, trying to take over a system that didn't want him. And since he couldn't get the old guard on his side, he was forced to rely on his own hand-picked team. The only problem was, his team was shaky at best. It was like a foundation built on sand. His number one advisor died right before all this went down. And the guys who were left, they were known for being, well, unreliable and kind of shifty. So Liu Yu was basically on a political island. He had nobody he could trust to hold down the fort back home. He was terrified they'd either screw it all up or worse, stab him in the back. And this is where things get really interesting. You can see his problems so clearly when you put him side by side with another legend of that era. To really get why Liu Yu failed in this key way, you have to compare him to the guy who literally wrote the book on how to build lasting power, Cao Cao. Now, you could make a pretty good argument that in pure military skill, Liu Yu was even better than Cao Cao. I mean, he reconquered lands that had been lost for 100 years. But Cao Cao was an absolute master at something else, something far more important for the long game: finding, managing, and promoting talented people.
When you look at their approaches, the difference is it's night and day. Lu Yue, he had this small, weak inner circle, and he pushed away the establishment. Cao Cao, on the other hand, made finding the best and brightest his #1 job. And he didn't just hire them, he brought them into his system and gave them real power. And that's the whole lesson right there. Lu Yue's power was all about him, his personal strength, which meant it was incredibly fragile. Cao Cao built something bigger than himself, strong institutions run by smart people. And that is how he made sure his legacy would last.
And you know, this whole story isn't just a dusty old tale from ancient China. Not at all. It pulls back the curtain on a rule of power that's absolutely timeless, a rule about what it really takes to build something that sticks around.
The ending of this story is it's tragic. Just a few years after Lu Yu raced back east, his hard-won prize, Chang'an, fell to his enemies. The history books say that when he got the news, he just stared north, towards the city he'd lost, and he wept. I think in that moment, he realized exactly what he traded away. He got the throne, yeah, but he lost the bigger dream.
When you boil it all down, it might have just come down to one. The #1. He needed just one person who was both loyal and incredibly capable, someone he could trust completely to run things while he was gone. He didn't have that one person, and because of that, his foundation was hollow. Without that rock, the whole thing was just waiting to crumble.
It really all comes back to this one simple but incredibly powerful Chinese proverb. And it's just as true now as it was back then. 多人则兴, 失人则亡. Basically, gain people, you flourish. Lose people, you perish. It's not just about being the best fighter or having the smartest strategy. Real, lasting power. It's built on the backs of the talented, loyal people you can bring to your side.
And so that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Lu Yu's story, it's a huge warning sign, isn't it? It makes you wonder, who are the leaders out there today, whether it's in politics or business or anywhere else, who are so fixated on winning the next battle that they forget to build the team, who forget to build the foundation of trust that's needed to actually secure the future? It really boils down to this. Are you trying to win a prize, or are you trying to build a legacy? Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.